Welcome to episode 3 of the Play with Fire podcast. I'm your host, Ashley McKen. And on today's episode, I get to interview Catra Corbett, author and ultramarathoner. Catra is going to share with us how she has avoided burnout after pushing her body hundreds and hundreds of miles every year. She just recently finished Badwater 135 and has now getting ready to run. And at the time of this being released, she'll have run back-to-back 200-mile races. Now, for somebody who can push their mind and their body that far, she's sure to have insights for you that no matter what you're doing, whether you're a runner or not, her secrets to avoiding burnout so you can continue to do the things that you love. Here's my conversation with Catra. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Catra.
Thanks for having me.
So you're just coming off of Badwater 135. And so for people that don't know what craziness that is, why don't you give us a little debrief of what that is?
So Badwater 135 is a race that goes from all across Death Valley, which is the hottest temperatures on Earth were recorded at Badwater Basin, 135 degrees, I believe it was, like in 1940 or something. But anyway, so it starts in the lowest point and it ends up at Whitney Portals, 135 miles away, which is at the base of Mount Whitney. And actually it's on the shoulder of Mount Whitney. It's not considered the base. The race actually used to go to the top of Mount Whitney, which would end in 146 miles, but it doesn't do that. It hasn't done that in years because the park won't allow that. That's pretty dangerous. I'm still at awe, like, of the people that summited Whitney, like, right after running 135 miles. So it's considered like the toughest foot race in the world because of the extreme conditions. You're in super, super hot, like oven hot. And the only way to describe the intensity of the heat, like I've had people come out and crew me and they're just like, it's hot, hotter than hot. And it's like the only way you could describe it to somebody is like holding a blow dryer like arm's length away and putting it on high heat and blowing it in your face. That's the intensity of the heat at Badwater. So, I mean, even if it's only 115 or 120, just the amount of heat that is coming up off that asphalt, you feel like your legs are frying. That's how hot it gets. So, but this year was a cooler year.
It wasn't. Well, I heard you get like toast sandwiches that, like, when somebody makes you your peanut butter and jelly, that it's like toasted by the time like it reaches your hands. Like, it's just hot.
Well, one year, my boyfriend, when he was running it, like the tortillas got kind of wet, so we were putting them on top of the cars to cook on top of the car, the hood to cook the tortilla, and it worked.
Oh my! It's just hot, super hot.
Yeah, so it's very hot. People have fried eggs on the ground, literally.
I believe it. I mean, the stories are crazy, but that's not even what's crazy. You're coming off of that, and now what's next and when?
So next week I'm doing the first of what's called the Triple Crown of 200. So it's Bigfoot 200, which is in Washington State, and it goes around Mount St. Helens. It's super technical, super hard, and extremely beautiful. It's like one of my favorite courses, and actually probably my favorite courses out of all of the races I've run. And then the second one is the following month. So that's in August, and September is Tahoe 200. And it goes around Tahoe and up in the higher country around Tahoe, not just the Tahoe Rim Trail. It's obviously extending out because it goes 200 miles. Mm-hmm. And then the last one being Moab 240 miler, and it's in Moab, Utah. And so actually all of them are longer than 200 miles. So I think Bigfoot is 208, Tahoe's 206, and then of course Moab's 240 miles. So that's the Triple Crown. And I did it last year, and I said I would never do that again, because it takes a lot out of you. I mean, it's a lot of, lack of sleep going into it, because you're awake for, you get like 109, 110 hours to finish him. And I'm out there for like 86 hours, 90 hours, moving. So, and sleeping when I can. But it does take a lot out of you doing those. And so on top of that, I added Badwater this year to it. So
it was a nice, warm.
I don't know. And I didn't mention, like, 5 days after I finished Bigfoot, I'm doing the John Muir Trail with a couple of friends. So I haven't done it in a few years, but I've done it almost every summer for 12 years now. And it's 224 miles total, 212 to the top of Whitney or whatever, and then 11 miles back down, 12 miles to the portal. So it's about 224 miles long, and we'll do it hopefully in like 8 or 9 days. So we'll see how I feel.
And then how many races on average are you running a year? Not just the training, but like events?
Probably like 15, 20. It all depends. I mean, so I'm doing this. I've already done a bunch this year, and all of them except for, I want to say, 1 or 2 have been over 100 miles or more.
So how did you get here? How did you find ultras? How did you get to deciding that just running really far was a really fun idea, and then get to where now you're doing several back to back? So where did this start for you?
So it started many years ago, back in 96. I had gotten clean and sober in 94, and I used to walk. And one day I decided, after 2 years working out in a gym, and I was like, I think I'm going to try running my little walking route that I used to take my dog on. And it was about 3 miles, maybe 4, close to 4. And I just, one day I said, I'm going to run it tomorrow. And so I left my little dog, and I went and I ran the whole route without stopping. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I just ran that. So I hopped in my car, because I didn't know back then we didn't have GPS and all of that fancy schmancy. So it was roughly like 3.89 or something like that miles. So it was close to 4. So I was like, wow, I'm going to start running. So 2 days later, after my running, like now I had run 2 days in a row, I saw a flyer for a 10K. So I decided to sign up for that. And it was like the following week. So I signed up for the 10K, knew nothing about running, ran really hard and fast. I mean, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anybody that ran. In fact, when I got clean and sober, I had to get rid of all of my friends. So I had like one friend that I used to work out with, my friend Kevin. And so anyways, I did the 10K, and I got back to my vehicle after, and there was a flyer for the San Francisco Marathon. And I was like, oh, I want to run a marathon. And I knew it was like 20 something miles. I didn't know the exact 26.2. So I asked my friend Kevin, I said, hey, I got a flyer in my car for San Francisco Marathon, and it's in 3 months. I go, how far is the marathon? And he goes, oh, that's 26.2. And I said, cool, I'm signing up for it. So that's kind of where it all started. So 3 months later, from running my first ever steps, I ran San Francisco Marathon. But I did buy a book on how to train for a marathon. And so I had to skip to the chapter that says what your training was 3 months before the marathon. So on a Sunday, the long run was 9 miles. And at this point, I only had run 6 miles as my longest run. So I got in my car at the time, and I set the odometer, and I drove out 4.5 miles. And I was like, okay, so there's a gas station here. I'll know that's my turnaround point for tomorrow for my long run for 9 miles. So that's kind of where it all started. And I just went from that 9 miles and went along with what the book said as my training regimen, and did it from there.
So how did it go after that first marathon? Did you leave? Because I know some runners leave going, I'm never doing it again. And then like a couple like days go by, and then they sign up for the next race. Did you have a good experience for that first marathon?
Well, in the middle of it, I was talking to some man that was just happened to be running next to me. And I was like, he was like, oh, he goes, is this your first marathon? And I said, yeah. And I said, but I'm going to run Honolulu in December. I want to run that marathon. I want to go to Hawaii and run a marathon. And he goes, you're like at mile 10, and you're already wanting to run another marathon. And that's kind of how my brain works. So I was already planning like my next thing in the middle of this thing. But side note, like when I finally got to like miles, because I kept waiting for this wall thing I read about. I knew nothing, like I said, about running. I hated running all my life. And it was like, oh, you're going to hit this wall at a certain mileage. And back then, there was only one gel company, and it was called Squeezy. It wasn't even, Goo wasn't around, or it's like way back in the day. And I got one at the race expo. So they're like, oh yeah, you use this at like mile 22, I think is where you supposedly hit this wall. So I opened that thing up, and I took this horribly disgusting gel, and I was like, okay, but I didn't feel anything until I actually got close to the stadium, because we had to run around the track in the stadium. But like right as I was approaching and I could see this stadium, like, 500 yards away, all of a sudden my legs felt like land. And I was like, but it's like, I just ran as fast as I could and got in there because you have to do a whole loop. And it's like, you want to, just get done. So yeah, my legs really hurt after that. Like the next, I don't think I've ever done a race, even after 100, did my legs hurt like that, because I didn't do enough training. I had just started running for a few months, and I ran pretty hard because I didn't know how to pace. And so the next day I was just like, even after, I was like limping. I couldn't even climb the steps. I was like, But I look back now and I'm like, wow, I can run like 200 miles and not even be like that.
So what do you think the difference is? Like, is it just training?
Oh yeah. It has a lot to do with it.
So then
it's running for 3 months and then running a marathon as hard as you can because you don't know how to pace. You're gonna feel
hurt.
It.
Yeah. But so then, what made you decide to run farther than that? Because most people say oh, well, you could drive that far, or I can't even drive 200 miles and all.
Yeah, I hate driving that far.
Right.
That's what people always say.
So what made that switch?
Well, had I known about ultras right then, I would have been running ultras, but it took me 2 years to discover that because I started running the following year. So I ran 2 marathons the first year. In my second year, I started running all the marathons in California, and that's where I would hear people talking about ultra marathons. And I was like, what's that? And they're like, oh, it's anything over 26.2. They're like, there's standard distance is like 50K. And I was like, well, what the heck is a 50K? And they're like, right. 31 miles. And there's 50 miles. And then there's 100K, which is a 62 miles. And then there's 100 milers. And I actually had known about 100-mile races because I remember when I was younger, my father was watching like a sports program. And he goes, come and watch. These people are running from Squaw Valley, where we've gone and skied, all the way to Auburn, where you've played soccer. And I was like, what? And it's like, I sat down for a minute and I was just like, okay, this is crazy. It was like 9 or 10. Mm-hmm. And so then never thought about it again until these people were mentioning that. And I was like, oh yeah, I know Western States. I know that race. My dad used to watch it on TV. My dad had run marathons before he passed away. So he was a runner. I was not a runner. And so was my brother. So yeah, I had heard of that race. And so anyways, I decided, once I kept hearing people talk about it, I was doing all these marathons in California, and some of them obviously were on trail. So my very first trail marathon, I was just like, holy shit, because it was like 2 loops of, 13.2 miles or whatever. And so I did 1 loop, and my mom was there with me, and she had been to like all my marathons prior. And so here I am doing this trail marathon, and so I finished 1 loop. She goes, oh, good, you're done. And I go, no, I'm not. I have to go 1 more time. And she's like, why are you so slow? I never had run on trails, didn't train. And I just remember reading when I got the information about the race in the mail, it was like, you have to carry a water bottle. You have to, and it was nothing, I was so used to like having an aid station every mile that on this, it was in the Marin Headlands in San Francisco. And I was like, oh my God, it was like 5 or 6 miles before you could get to water. And then they just had like some jugs of water sitting out and then some cookies. That was like the aid station for the company that used to put all these races out on the trails. They were like minimalist. You got nothing. So anyways, I finished that and I was just like, holy shit, I just, did a trail marathon. And so I started doing a bunch, and then I started meeting more people. And that second year, I was like, okay, well, I want to run an ultra marathon. I want to run a 50K, because now I'm doing back-to-back marathons at this point. So there was a few times I did a marathon on a Saturday and a marathon on a Sunday. And so I'm like, I have the training. I can do this. So I signed up for a 50K, and it was a lot harder than I thought.
Where was your first 50K?
I was in the Bay Area. So actually, I tried to sign up for this race called the Ohlone 50K, which at the time was the hardest one in California. So it was, back then you didn't have a lot of races to choose from. This was back in '97. So the race director actually talked me out of running it. He goes, have you run at Mission Peak? And I go, yeah, I've gone up to the top. And he goes, well, have you been beyond that? And I said, no. And he goes, well, this is like a mountain race. He goes, it's super tough. So he like totally talked me out of it. And he's like, I suggest you run Skyline 50K in Castro Valley. So with his advice, I was like, okay, he scared me. I was like, shit, I don't know what he was talking me out of it for. But anyway, so I did the Skyline 50K, finished that, and it was super hot. I didn't know anything about taking a salt pill, eating salty foods, hydrating correctly, like none of that. You know, when you're running marathons, you have water every mile. You don't have to worry about going 6 miles in between, and it's 105 degrees out, and thinking about having to cool your body down. And so I felt like the last 6 miles, I was like, my legs were like lead, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to pass out. It was that like bad. And then I got to the finish, and I was like, well, I think I'm going to run a 50 miler now.
So that's just been like how you, like you said, how your brain works, where it's never been like, do I want to do this? It was like, okay, well, what's next?
Well, I'm like, I'm not sure if I liked it. I have to try another distance, you know? And so it was just like that. So within less than a month, a few weeks, I did a 50 miler. And then I did another 50K. And then there was a 50 miler that I was signed up for. And this was all within under 4 months time. And it was pouring rain, like worst conditions. I've never run in like downpour like this. I mean, the trails were flooded. It was like, even the race director at the start, he's like, you could drop down to the 50K and you're not going to get a DNF, or totally fine with it, because it was like these floods all over the trail. And I just started out, and immediately, like, you know, I was in knee-deep puddles of water, and I was just like, shit. So after it was like 2 loops, and he like gave you the option to bail out and do this other shorter thing to get to 50K. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to try to stick this out. And if I stick this out, I'm running a 100 miler. So sure enough, I stuck it out, and like was the last person to finish. And like the last 3 miles, the sky's totally cleared. It was blue. It was like sunny. Birds were chirping. I got to the finish, and I was like, I just effing did this. I'm doing a 100 miler. So I found the next soonest one, which was like in a month, and so signed up for a 100 miler.
Wow.
And this is because I didn't know anybody that ran at the time.
So what was like the difference, and what makes it, like, have you just been, every time that you finished 100, it's just looking for like the next hardest race? Like, how do you approach picking them? Is it because now you're doing back-to-back 200s basically?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah. I like a challenge. So, I mean, you know, for me, it's just all about the challenge and just being out there, and just, especially now as I've gotten older, it's like, you know, people always think, oh, you're so badass. And it's like, well, no. I mean, you could be doing what I'm doing if you want to. It's not,
right.
You know, it's just, I have this desire to be outdoors and, you know, enjoying the scenery and seeing the beauty. You know, you're only here once. So my whole thing is like, I want to get out and live. And, you know, there was such a big part of my life when I was in drugs and alcohol that, you know, I was in such a dark space. So it's like, I just want to live each moment as best as I can. Oh, here's Truman coming to say hi. I love
Truman.
Here he is. Say hi.
How far does he run? Because I see him with
you. Well, yeah, he's run 550Ks. He's the only dachshund in the world to do ultramarathons, as far as we know. At the time, I think he was the only one that has did a marathon, but a guy on Facebook, I think his dachshund finally ran a marathon. He was training her for a marathon because he said she wanted to be like Truman when she grew up, and she was much younger. He is 13 now, and so he's got a heart murmur and an enlarged heart that the vets are like fine with him running 10 miles at a time. So he's slowing down a bit, but he goes 10 miles at a time, and he still goes up in the mountains. So he's amazing still.
He is amazing. All your pictures, he looks all ripped and muscly, and so
he still runs like about 25 miles a week. So, wow. And we let him go at his own pace. He's such a good sport. So yeah, and I always tell people, if he can run a 50K, any human can run a 50K.
Totally.
So when people try to say, oh, I could never do that, I'm like, you can. You just don't want to, because if a 4-inch high wiener dog with a long body can do it, you could do it.
Totally. And like you said, it's about wanting to. So what makes you still, after all these years of running them, want to? Because like, you can clearly overcome any challenge. Like, so
it's, you know, it's just keeps me alive. It keeps me, you know, not getting stale. You know, when you just sit and do nothing, your mind gets stale. You know, it's like, it just enhances your life, just getting outdoors. You don't have to be running ultra marathons like I do, but a lot of times now, since, you know, I'm older, I do it to let other women know, like, it's safe to be out in the wilderness by yourself. You know, it's like, because I get messages all the time. They're like, oh my God, what if you see a mountain lion or a bear? And I'm like, I've seen 13 mountain lions and I have not eaten yet. So I think we're okay.
Right.
And I see all kinds of animals out there. Nothing, you know, it's like, you're in their environment. If you're on a trail, just have safety things, you know, if you're that afraid, you know, and you're going where, you know, I wouldn't be running where there's grizzly bears in Alaska or anything without some sort of protection. But just carry bear spray or pepper. I carry pepper spray and a knife, and it was mainly, I started carrying it when I got Truman because he's been charged by other dogs, and I got it to protect him. And the thing with the knife, I've always kind of carried a knife with me because I know, you know, mountain lion doesn't want anything to do with me, but if it does, you got to fight back. There's no ifs, ands, and buts. That's just how you're going to survive a mountain lion attack. And it's not that many people have been killed. I mean, in 50 years, it's a very, you know, you're more likely getting hit by a car walking down the street. So, but you got to be protecting yourself. Just there's maybe that rogue mountain lion that has a mental issue, and you got to fight back. So, you know, and I've had bear encounters, but they're, you know, they don't want anything to do with people either. And you just give them space. When you see them with a cub, you just back slowly and let them wander and do their thing until they disappear. Don't come at them. You know, you just have to appreciate them. And actually, I always tell people, when I was living in the Bay Area, you had to worry about the cows, because when they have the calves, they will charge you. Like no other animal charges you like these guys do. And so I've been charged by cows, but it's like you learn to go wide, go around them, give them their space when they have a calf, because that's the only time they're concerned. And I once was attacked by a wild turkey. That was bizarre, 2 years ago. I've dealt with wild turkeys all my life in the Bay Area running around, and this turkey came out of frickin' nowhere. It freaked me out, and it literally attacked me, kept flying at me, and these things are huge.
I'm like trying to picture, like, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, when was it? It was like, I guess it was over a year ago. It was, and I was doing a solo 200-mile run on the Ohlone Wilderness Trail. And so the next night, my friend Gabby, or the afternoon, was coming out to pace me, and I said, I gotta show you this. I was attacked, and I had to spray my pepper spray at the wild turkey, but it did nothing to it. It finally went away. And she goes, no, you're lying. And I said, I swear to God. And so we went, you know, part of my loop was over near where this wild turkey was. And sure enough, the wild turkey attack came running at her and flying into her, and I videotaped it. And she was like freaking out. She goes, I've never been afraid in my life out here. She goes, and then I Googled, like, what the heck? I mean, she must have had eggs. She must have had something. And so then I read she was protecting a nest. But like 2 days later, she was completely gone. So I guess the babies were hatching from what I gathered and read. And that's what they're doing. They're protecting their area. But it's just like, it was weird. And when you've been
out of all animals
for like a day,
I
know. And I was like awake for a day and a half when this happened. So I'm like, whoa, what is going on? I'm not being attacked by a wild turkey. So yeah, but safety, just being safe. And I love getting out there. Like I said, it inspires other women, you know, and they go, well, she's running by herself, or she's going out Mount Whitney by herself. Because even today I was picking up my permit, and the girl's like, you're going by yourself? And I'm like, well, yeah, you know, and she's like, oh, okay. I'm like, you know, there's 100 other people out there. I'm pretty safe. So.
What do you think has been the hardest part of running? Is it the physical piece of it? Is it mental for you? Like, do you even have challenge with that tape playing in your head? Because a lot of times for runners, it's the self-talk that gets people down. But I can't see that in your.
I get that. I mean, I would be lying if I said negative thoughts don't creep into my head. But it's a matter of switching that off. So when I'm out there, I think of, like, when I'm like, oh, fuck, this is so hard. This is ridiculous. What the hell am I doing this for? I've done so many of these. I don't need to do this. What am I trying to prove? I don't need to prove it. And then you're like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. Your body's fine. Nothing's broken. There's no excuses. There's people that would be wanting to run right now that are suffering from a serious illness. They're going through chemotherapy or something like that. They would say, hey, Catra, let's switch it up today. I'll go run 200 miles for you, and you can go through my treatment and my pain. So I'm doing it basically for them. And I think about people that in my life who have passed away from various illnesses or just, you know, by chance for whatever. And I'm doing it for them. I'm just running for everybody that can't run right now or is no longer with me. So I use them as my, like, you know, angels around me. It's like, hey, help me get through this rough patch kind of thing. So, and I know one day I won't be able to do this forever. You know, most people can. They go as long as they can, you know. So I'm doing what I can now, because a lot of times what people do is they want to do something and they're like, later. Well, later becomes never, because then you're getting older and things are happening in your life, and it's like, you got to do it now. Just do it now. You find a way to do it and do it now. So I'm doing everything now because I can. So.
Well, and I hear a lot of people to use the excuse like, oh, it's hard on your body, it's tearing it down. But yeah. I mean, you've added and stacked things on over time, not like diminished any of it. So I mean, it's training, right? And nutrition and taking care of yourself.
It's nutrition, training, cross training, working out with weights. I mean, positive attitude, and really what you're putting in your body. I'm vegan. I've been vegan for 25 years and mostly raw. And it's like, you know, if you're eating clean, that's going to help your mind, you know, and if you're working out with weights, that's going to help your body and strengthen the muscles around, like things like your knees and like that. And, you know, really running on the road tears you up more than anything. I mean, when I trained for Badwater, it was like I did, you know, a good quality 3 months of just training on flats. And I was like, good God, thank God Badwater's over. I'm going on the trail. The next day I was like in the mountains, like, you know, and Badwater was just a couple of weeks ago, and I've been literally on the trails every single day. I have not run on a road at all. I'm like, nope.
So for people that haven't run, like, how does it feel different to your body, like the asphalt versus the mountains? Like, why do you crave the mountains and the trails, which, I mean, there's elevation gain, there's rocks. It seems logically like that would be harder. But what makes it feel better in your body in that?
Well, because you're using different muscle groups. So when you're running on a road, you're using the same, you're striding the same, you're not really climbing much, the same muscles over and over. So those are when people end up getting injured, because you're using it's repetition, you know, over and over again. So when you're climbing a mountain, you're also using your mind a lot more, because you're thinking about where you're putting your foot, and you're going up, down, up, down. So you think about all the different muscles you're using instead of using just like the same thing over and over, where you, if you're having like, say, a hamstring issue, then you're starting to compensate because you're just doing the same repetition, flat running over and over. So those are the people that I think tend to get injured more. Plus, there's no give in asphalt like there is on a trail. Trails are softer, even though you're running on rocks. You're jumping up and down, and you're, you know, running on crushed gravel. I mean, it's a lot softer.
Much softer.
And even, I mean, people would think, oh my God, it's more dangerous. No, you're thinking more, you know. Of course, on a road, you don't have to think as much. You're just going fast. So, but it really, I think it sharpens your mind more too, and you're more aware. And beauty, I mean, like, who wants to look at houses? You know, and I hate, like, training on the road. It's like, okay, I never even cross in front of a car. I always go around. Like, they sit, even if they see me, I'm like, no, I don't touch you. I'm going around you. I don't want to get hit. So, but yeah, just, you know, it's just a beautiful place, being in the mountains and running on trails. I love what I see, something different every day. On a road, you're seeing, you know, pretty much the same thing. When I used to train on the road, when I was first up and coming and running, it was just like the same loop, the same houses, the same people going to work at the same time, and same this, that. You know, now it's like, okay, where do I want to go today? You know, and I've been, since I live in Bishop, like, I open up my book and I go, I'm going to go to a different trail. I'm going to try this trail. I'm going to try this mountain. I'm going to try this peak, you know? So it's like I can run in a different place every single freaking day, probably for the next 5 years if I wanted to, you know, all within less than an hour drive.
That's awesome.
And most of it's closer than that. So
that's so incredible.
Yeah, I'm 19 minutes from a 9,000 feet starting at a trailhead, you know. That's how close I am. So I can go up to North Lake, South Lake, be out on the JMT, John Muir Trail. Like, I can do an out and back, and it would be like 22 miles. And I'm out there with the hikers, and they're like, where did you come from? And it's like, Bishop Pass right over there. And they're like, wow, you know, just amazed that I'm out there running. And I used to think that when I was fast packing, doing a lot of like my John Muir stuff when I would do it in fast packing style in like 6 days, I'd see other runners out there and I'm like, where are they coming from? This is when, before I knew like how big this Sierras is and how close you could get in. And, you know, it's like not just the trailhead in Yosemite or Mount Whitney. It's like there's all kinds of trailheads that pop in and out, and you can just do multiple loops out there and be back home in the evening. So.
Is that one of your favorite places to run? Like, or has it?
I mean,
do you have a favorite?
Probably. So right now, I would say, well, I went up Kearsarge Pass, and that's like one of my favorite places, and that's one of the busiest trailheads here, and we just did that on Sunday for the first time, or Saturday, and it's at 11,000 feet. But I like Bishop Pass too, which is here, and Paiute Pass. But anywhere along the John Muir Trail is beautiful. So, but I mean, I'm every day it's like something new. Like I'm going to be going up Mount Whitney tomorrow. Like people wish to be living that close. You know, I only looked on the website today because it's really hard to get permits now. And so I went last week with a friend of mine that was summiting after his Badwater solo 135. He was doing the 146. And I wanted to do it right after I did Badwater too, but I couldn't get a permit. So I was like, okay, less than a week later, I'm going up still. And so this morning I wasn't even planning. And I was like, where should I run tomorrow? You know, I want to get another 20-mile run in before Bigfoot. And then I was like, just looking at the website, and I thought, oh, let me see what's going on Mount Whitney. And I was like, no way, there's permits available tomorrow. And I just had to be there by noon to get my permit. So I bought it online and drove an hour to go pick up my permit so I can go up tomorrow.
That's awesome. I mean, that's so lucky. So yeah. What advice, or what's one of the things main lessons that you've learned from running over the years, like that the trails have taught you, or that the community of ultra runners have taught you over the years? That's like one of your biggest takeaways.
Is just loving the wilderness and appreciating, you know, the beauty that we have all around us. I mean, everywhere you look, I mean, you can find beauty, even if it's just like a public park trail, something small. I mean, you find beauty, even on those streets. I find beauty looking up into the mountains. But I've learned to appreciate where I live and appreciate keeping the wild places beautiful and clean. I mean, when I see trash, my goal is always to pick up 3 pieces of trash when I'm out on a run. So, and it's really hard to do in the wilderness right now. I mean, people are that respectful of the environment, the majority of them that are up there. I wouldn't say like over on Mount Whitney side, I did pick up a couple of pieces of trash because you're getting so many just like day hikers coming from, you know, that want to do that whole thing and be a selfie on the top, which has brought a lot of issues to big peaks in the area and, you know, people being ill prepared or whatever. But, you know, it's just, I want everybody else to enjoy it too. But just, you know, I always tell people when I'm picking up trash or something, you know, like, hey, you should try to pick up 3 pieces of trash on the trail. That way we can all do our part in keeping it clean. So it's made me more aware of, like, you know, just keeping things beautiful and enjoying it and showing other people, you know, the places I go. Not everybody can get out to where I go. So I just, you know, on my phone, take pictures and show people, and they're just like, wait, you were over here and now you're over there. That's all in the same day. And I'm like, yep. So.
Because you run fast. I've seen you run. You run fast.
No, I used to be fast. I'm slower now. But I don't care. As long as I can go. It doesn't matter. Slow, fast, whatever. You know, and when I'm out training, I always tell people, because they're like, what's your pace? I'm like, I don't know. I just wear my GPS so I know how far I went. I don't really pay attention to time. I'm like, oh, shoot, it's like 8 hours. How far did I go? You know, sometimes it's a lot. Sometimes it's not. You know, I'm stopping taking pictures, and I don't pause my, you know, like guys I go with are like pausing everything. And I'm like, who cares? What, you know, because they're doing the Strava thing and it looks bad on their Strava. I'm like, I don't really care about any of that. So when I do a race, I try to, of course, push myself. So training to me, and that's why I think I have such longevity, is because I didn't get burnt out. I don't get burnt out like that because I'm not like pushing hard all the time. It's just like when I race, then it's like when I want to, like, ooh, there's a girl in front of me, I'm going to pass her, you know, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But when I'm on the trail, it's just like, hey, how are you doing? You know, like I like to say hello to people and talk to them and, you know, and just enjoy, you know, I meet so many cool people out there. all the time on the trail. It's just like really nice people. And when you're in the wilderness, I mean, more so than like on a road, most people aren't, you know, you say hi and they're just kind of like, you know, in the wilderness, everybody's like, hey, hi, you know, super friendly, especially I noticed in the Eastern Sierras. When I was living in Fremont and I'd go up Mission Peak and I could say hi to 10 people and maybe 5 of them would say hi back. And I'm like, what is wrong with these city people? But when people are in the wilderness, they're totally different, you know. Like,
Yeah.
I guess because they're on vacation or whatever, you know.
Well, it's different. I mean, I noticed that going from road racing to trails, it was just a different mentality and community, and people aren't looking out just for themselves and their time and their pace. It's like, you know, they would share their food with you, or they would help you if you fell and got hurt. You know, it's just different.
Yeah, not on the road.
No, they're just like, good luck with that.
That's what I always tell people that are triathletes. I'm like, totally different. You'll love running on the trails. I'm like, get away from that.
Yeah.
Because everybody is so like, you know, intense, very tense. And you see that crossover even in like faster, flatter ultras. And you're just like, that person's energy is like way off. They must be a triathlete.
Yeah.
No offense to anybody that does that.
No, it's just different. It's a different mindset.
Yeah.
For people that are, you know, following their passions or trying to, and, you know, they have people like, you know, with runners, you hear that you're crazy or that's too far, or like, do you want to do, like, whatever it is that they're chasing, what advice do you have for people that are going after the things that they love so they don't get burnt out? And you said having fun is part of it and keeping it so you're not pushing all the time.
I think it's important to not listen to the chatter of other people, because a lot of people, you know, when I started running, you're going to get injured. That's bad for your knees. Like, you know, all these things can happen to you. You know what? Don't listen to anybody. Listen to yourself. If it's something you want to do, just go for it. Just, you know, it's sad that people will be negative about it. But look, I'm 54 years old. I've been running for over 20 years and I'm still going okay. So it shows you that, you know, if you do everything, eat correctly, take, you know, supplements, you're going to be okay. And work out in a gym, you know, cross train, and just get out and do whatever you want to do, and don't wait. Like, if you want to do a race, do it now. If you say, I want to do a 100-miler, but I'm not going to do it for 3 years, don't wait 3 years. What if you get injured? What if something happens in 3 years? You know, it's like, do it now. If you're already doing ultras, you could do it. Do it now. Don't wait.
Take one small step to go towards whatever that thing is. Because like you said, if you keep waiting, it's just never gonna.
Yep. And if this guy can run ultras, anybody can run ultras.
So cute. I love trimming.
That is the word to everybody. It's like, trimming can do it, you can do it. If I can train a wiener dog to run, and it wasn't like I just drug him around. It's like he went from training like a normal person would train and to doing ultras. And a lot of people are like, you can't run with those kind of dogs. And it's like, really? Well, I see your wiener dog is like 10 pounds overweight, and, you know, it's like, no. And even all his veterinarians that he has a really good one here in Bishop. I've gotten spine x-rays. It's like, I've done so much for this dog to make sure to prove to people, like, no, this is not bad for him, what he's doing. So he has a perfect spine at 13 and a half, when a lot of these dogs have issues because they're jumping, not from running. Like, my vet has been like, that's the best thing for those guys, is to keep them a little bit on the thin side and have them run. You know, it's like going to keep their weight down and it'll keep them strong. And so, you know, like I said, he's getting older, and, you know, as we get older, we slow down, and he's got like a heart thing, and they call it actually it's the enlarged heart that he has is athletic heart syndrome, and they see it in sled dogs. A lot of sled dogs.
He's a sled dog.
And he's like,
totally
it's really weird. He goes, I've never seen it in a dachshund. He goes, but it makes perfect sense because he's an athlete. So he's actually seeing a cardiologist on Friday, and I'm going to go from there. If he tells me like that, you know, cut his running even more in half, that may have an issue on his heart, then I'll say, fine. He's taking heart medication, but he seems fine. Like, my regular vet who sees him every 3 months, he's like, it's fine. He goes, let's just have him see the cardiologist that comes and visits every 3 months, and just let him give us, you know, some wise words and see what he says about it. So, but other than that, he's doing fine.
When he sees that you're getting ready for a run, does he like gear up like he's ready to go? Or, I mean, has he always been that way?
He's not a super like hyper dog. It's really funny because people are like, oh, you know, like, other dogs they've had, the minute the door opens and the shoes go, like they want to get out. He wants to get out. He doesn't want you to leave him, so he'll sit on top of your stuff. Like I put my shoes out and I put him like in this little wicker basket. He'll get inside the basket. So like you're taking me, and that's how he does it. He doesn't like hurry up and like, you know, he just gets into stuff or stands there and follows you around. Like he will follow me all over the house. So, but it's so hot here that I have to take him really early in the morning. Or like I was telling you, I drive 19 miles up the hill. So we're at almost 5,000 feet elevation here. And I go up 9,000 and it's 20 degrees cooler. So that's where I end up taking him. And it's wooded and shaded and, you know, and then I can put him in the water after because there's always like these pristine lakes around. So that's, where I take him in the summer because I could tell that this year, well, last year when we moved here for the first time, we didn't live in this kind of heat. I mean, it got hot in Fremont and like 85-ish. I mean, sometimes we got 100, but it's like pretty much 100 every day right now. So I can definitely tell that, you know, they say when it's harder on you, and I was training for Badwater, so I'd be out in the heat, and then I'd realize, well, I'm really super trained, and I'm trying to take him out, and it's 10 o'clock, and it's already warm out. I'm like, yeah, this ain't good, because he's, like, really dragging. So if I take him, like, at 6 in the morning, he's, like, gung-ho going, or at night, or up the mountain. But I'm waiting for the day. Like, one day he won't be able to do this. And I'm prepared. I got a pack. I could put him in a pack. And I have a jogging stroller. I'm, like, ready. This guy ain't sitting home. He's going to still be able to go right along with me. So
I love that.
I'm prepared. Yeah, and I put him in the stroller, and he's just like, I ain't staying in the stroller.
He's like, who do you think you are?
Well, I put him in it, and I was like, oh, he's getting so old. He can't run that much. And so the minute I put him in the stroller, he's, like, wanting out. So it's like, okay. So he could still run on the road 8 miles when it's not hot out. And we go to the grocery store, put the groceries in the stroller, and push him back. Yeah.
So last question, and then I'll let you go. What do you think the difference is between the people that make it when they follow their dreams and the people that don't? Well, you have a better life when you're following your dreams and you make them happen. I mean, I feel, you know, I have a lot of friends that wished now, and they're getting older, wish they would have done more when they're younger. And it's like, well, you can't switch that around. So you could switch that now and get out and do these things that you want to do. But I just feel like you have a better life, and you're mentally, it helps you just in day-to-day life, just getting out and doing things you enjoy. It's going to give you a longer life or a more fulfilling life, you know, happier life. Totally.
For sure.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to pause this. Stop it. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope that you enjoyed the episode. I think both Catra and Truman are truly remarkable. And you can go over to catracorbett.com and grab her new book, Reborn On The Run, her journey from addiction to ultramarathoning. And one of the options at checkout is to get an autographed copy signed by her, but you can also have the option to have it signed by Truman as well. So be sure to head over to catracorbett.com, grab that signed copy of her book, and be sure to go over to playwithfirepodcast.com and then check out all the other links to follow Catra in the show notes there below. I will see you again soon.